Greetings everyone, please don't forget to click that like and subscribe button. On the 18th of October 2018, Gregory Karelsi and Mr. Prezano Holland were killed in a shooting incident on the corner of Barracuda Crescent and Kastielberg Road, Nooit Gedacht, Bishop Lavis. Gregory was employed as a security officer in the Community Safety Department of the City of Cape Town. He also worked as a police reservist, was well known in the community of the Bishop Lavis area, and was an active member in the neighborhood for community safety as well as crime prevention. Dale Karelsa, the son of Gregory Karelsi, made a credible and reliable identification of the appellant as being one of the two people who shot and killed the deceased. Dale was 27 years old at the time of the murder. Dale's version is briefly as follows. On the 18th of October 2018, he was at home with his father in Bishop Lavis. At about 15:20, his father told him that he was going to attend to an incident in Valhalla Park and left armed with his .38 revolver in a waist holster. Later that afternoon, between 17 o'clock and 18 o'clock, as he was standing in the doorway of the house, Dale saw his sister walk past heading for the bus stop on her way to work. 2 minutes after she had passed, he heard a single shot and then a series of shots. He jumped over the wall because he thought his sister was in danger. He called to her to return to the house and kept on running in the direction of the shots. He said that he was not trying to be a hero. Rather, this was an automatic reaction to a high-pressure situation. As he was running, Dale heard more shots and saw two people firing shots. The shooting stopped. He saw the one shooter bend down and fiddle with the person who was lying on the ground. The appellant was standing over the person, pointing a firearm towards him, while the other shooter searched him. The two assailants then ran in the direction of Valhalla Park. As Dale approached the body lying on the pavement, he realized that the person who had been shot was his father. When Dale reached his father, he had already died as a result of the bullet wounds. His firearm was no longer in his possession. Dale immediately identified the assailants as members of the firm gang who lived in Valhalla Park. He did not know their proper names, only their nicknames, Krau and Wena. Dale Karelsi had gone to school in Valhalla Park, and while they were not friends, he saw them both very regularly. In fact, he said that he saw the appellant on a daily basis. The appellant used a gangster language known as Sabella when conversing with his friends. He was antagonistic towards Dale, who thought the reason for this was his father's anti-gang sentiments. Dale kept this information to himself and his family. It was only 19 days later, and having been persuaded to do so by his uncle and a good friend of his father, that Dale agreed to make a statement to the investigating officer, Colonel Kinnear. Dale said that he was scared to come forward, and only did so once he had been given assurances by his uncle that he could trust Colonel Kinnear. Colonel Kinnear had been in the police service for 31 years, was born in Bishop Lavis, and like the deceased, had lived his entire life in the area. Unfortunately, in September 2020, Colonel Kinnear was murdered in a hail of bullets outside his house in Bishop Lavis, while investigating numerous cases of organized crime involving gangsters and high-level police officers. According to Warrant Officer Wesley Lombard, a state witness, he said the motive on Gregory Karelsa's hit is behind the incident which happened on the afternoon of Saturday, the 17th of June 2017, in the Nooit Gedacht area, adjacent to Valhalla Park. The trial, which was to be heard before the Western Cape High Court, and in respect of which Gregory Karelsa was a witness for the state, is linked to gang affiliations between the gang called the Firm Gang and a faction of the 28s Gang. The latter gang has a number of leaders, including the Stanfield family, who control the 28s in the Valhalla Park area. Craig Stanfield was related to Ralph and Simon Stanfield. Abraham Wilson was affiliated to the 28s, which is known as the Firm, in the area and outside of prison. Actually, he is the father of the convicted serial killer Cameron Wilson, who went on a reign of terror in Valhalla Park, knowing very well he's protected by his father Abraham Wilson. In the course of investigation, he had obtained a statement from Gregory Karelsa, dated the 18th of June, 2017. In the statement, He stated that around 14:35 on the 17th of June 2017, he was outside of his residence on the corners of Tuna and Barracuda Crescent, Nooit Gedacht, Bishop Lavis, when a gold-colored VW Polo drove past and made a U-turn on further down the road and drove back in his direction. There were 3 occupants inside the vehicle. He identified the person seated behind the driver as Abraham Wilson. About 10 seconds later, he heard gunshots. With the aid of a male person driving another vehicle, he pursued the VW. During pursuit, the driver of the VW jumped a red traffic light, and he called radio control for assistance. After some time, he saw Wilson and 2 others walking close to Eleanor Road when he called at Wilson to come to him. Wilson responded that he did nothing wrong, and the 3 ran away into different directions. Carelsa pursued Wilson, caught up with him, and after a struggle, Carelsa succeeded to place him under arrest. Wilson told him that it was the other guy who had fired the shots, that he went into the Nyanga area to buy a sheep head. But after a bodily search, it was apparent that he had no money on him. He could not explain how he would have managed to make the purchase. Carelsa returned him to the scene at Forel Road, and upon arriving there handed him over to Captain Vanderberg of the Saps. He gave a description of the other suspect who had run away and stated that he had seen his face and would be able to point him out. The shooting was linked to gang activities. The victims were 31-year-old gospel singer Wilton Fredericks and 2 other men. In October 2020, Waylin Abdullah aka Wayner and Ashwin Willemse aka Krau were sentenced to 29 years in prison for the murder of Gregory Carelsa and Prezano Holland. Previously, Craig Stanfield had been convicted of the possession of a firearm, possibly an R5 or AK-47 rifle, in February 2014, and had received a 5-year sentence, of which 2 years were suspended. He served 18 months behind bars and had been nabbed for the triple murder in October 2017, during the period of the suspension. Craig Stanfield and Abraham Wilson were arrested for the triple murder at Ferrell Road, but were later released, and they would continue with their reign of terror. Rashid Staggy was a feared and influential figure in Cape Town's underworld, rising to prominence as the leader of the Hard Livings Gang, one of the most powerful and violent criminal organizations in South Africa. His story is deeply intertwined with the history of gang warfare on the Cape Flats. On August 4, 1996, Pagad members publicly executed his twin brother Rashad Staggy in one of South Africa's most infamous acts of vigilantism. The horrific event was caught on camera and shocked the nation, marking a turning point in gang-Pagad relations. Despite his brother's death, Rashid continued to lead the Hard Livings Gang, consolidating power and expanding their criminal empire.
Straight, and then we are a team. Then I can tell him what's on my mind, what do I think about Menenberg and how to handle the people and how to do things to survive.
His involvement in organized crime eventually led to his downfall. In 2003, he was convicted of a robbery and possession of stolen firearms and sentenced to 15 years in prison. While behind bars, Staggy's influence in the gang world diminished, but never fully disappeared. He was released on parole in 2013 under strict conditions, and he publicly claimed to have reformed, even attempting to work with anti-crime initiatives. However, many believed he remained connected to the criminal underworld, and he wanted to enter nightclub extortion. On December 13, 2019, Rashid Staggy was gunned down in Salt River, not far from where his brother had been murdered decades earlier. He was shot multiple times while sitting in his car outside his home. The attack was widely believed to be a gang-related hit, possibly linked to power struggles within the Cape underworld. Nearly 5 years later, in September 2024, reports emerged that members of the firm gang had been charged with Rashid Staggy's murder, with Ralph Stanfield identified as the mastermind who financed the hit, and Jonathan Cloet was named as the gunman. On February 2, 2021, William Red Stevens, a high-ranking general in South Africa's notorious 27s gang, was assassinated outside his home in Kraaifontein, Cape Town. 3 gunmen approached Stevens as he sat outside and fatally shot him, an event that led to immediate violent reprisals between rival gangs in the area. Stevens was a significant figure in Cape Town's underworld, initially joining the 26's gang during his incarceration. He later transitioned to the 27ES, where he earned a reputation for his violent tendencies and rose to the rank of general. He was also involved in the case of Brian Weinstein. In June 2024, significant developments occurred in the investigation into Stevens' murder. 3 members of the firm gang, Jonathan Cloete, Abraham Wilson, and Shaquille Pelston, were arrested and charged with his assassination. Court documents revealed that these individuals were allegedly hired by Ralph Stanfield, the purported leader of the firm gang. Jonathan Cloete was identified as the triggerman who fired the fatal shots. The charges against the trio are linked to incidents including the September 2021 murder of Faisal Adams, who was a police officer based at Parliament. He had been visiting a cousin in Cape Town's northern suburbs when he was fatally shot in Victoria Street, Parau. Additionally, the trio faced charges related to the attempted murder of Joel Booysen, son of alleged Sexy Boys gang leader Jerome Donkie Booysen, who was shot twice in 2 different incidents in 2023. On the 17th of December 2024, Craig Stanfield's reign of terror came to an abrupt end when he was shot and killed in Valhalla Park just after 4 p.m. According to sources, the 42-year-old gang figure was ambushed by rival gang members shortly after his release from prison that same morning. Stanfield had been facing attempted murder charges, but the case was dropped after the complainant withdrew, allowing him to walk free. However, his freedom was short-lived. As he walked alongside a friend, 2 gunmen from the Rude Boys gang opened fire. His companion managed to escape, but Stanfield was not as fortunate. One of the attackers approached and shot him multiple times at close range, leaving him dead on the scene. Craig Stanfield was a high-ranking member of the firm gang and a cousin of Ralph Stanfield. A source at the time indicated that aside from Ralph Stanfield, Craig was one of the highest-ranking members, second only to Johannes Baal Abrahams. In January 2025, it was reported that Abraham Wilson died in prison, just a week after allegations surfaced that he had been beaten to death by officials from the Department of Correctional Services. However, an affidavit he had filed at the Cape Town Magistrates Court in December revealed that he had also suffered a heart attack while in custody. Wilson, who was arrested alongside alleged firm gang boss Ralph Stanfield, was awaiting trial for a failed assassination attempt on the Joel Booysen. In his affidavit, he stated that he had initially been arrested in November 2023 and taken to Mafuleni Saps, where officers allegedly pressured him to provide incriminating information about Stanfield. He also detailed an incident in July 2024 when his prison cell was raided. He claimed he was forced to lie on a cold concrete floor despite being in severe pain, a plea he said was ignored by officials. Later that same day, he suffered a heart attack. Wilson criticized the prison's inadequate health care, warning that his incarceration could cost him his life. His death has raised further questions about conditions within South Africa's correctional facilities and the treatment of high-profile detainees.